Ary Rosenbaum here with another fun-filled episode of that 401k podcast. This week's topic, we're going to talk about the 401k plan, Bermuda Triangle. Um, and of course, first things first, let's go to talking about our national virtual conference at the end of January. It's free to attend. Go to that 401ksite.com for further information, as well as the events for Chicago and Denver. We got those up and running for April and May. The sites are live. We got to add some logos of some new plan provider sponsors and whatnot, and adding sponsors by the day to the National Virtual Conference, which again is in about 2 months. Got already about a couple dozen people signed up for it already, and of course, Full Circle is available on Amazon Kindle and paperback. And we do have a page on Amazon.com for that 401k plan provider handbook, which is up and running. Kindle you can pre-order. Paperback will be available on January 6th. That will be also the live date for the Kindle, the Kindle version as well. I don't know. I haven't bought a book in years. It's all been Kindle. And always try to do on a double Kindle Points Day and whatnot. But yeah, it's $9.95 I think for a Kindle and $11.95 for a paperback. Same thing with Full Circle. So go to Amazon.com, sign up for those books. That 401ksite.com. Sign up for our events. For Chicago and Denver, $100 a head, $50 for multiple attendees from the same firm. And of course, plenty of sponsorship opportunities still left. Sponsorships start as low as $500. So let's get to the topic at hand. It's a known fact that I love disaster movies. My favorite movie of all time is Airplane, which is, of course, a send-up of Zero Hour, which is a film, I think, from the 1950s. And there's some, stuff put in there from some of the airport movies. My favorite, non-comical disaster movie was The Poseidon Adventure, but I do have a deep love of the airport movies. I think my favorite one is Airport 79, The Concorde. That's because it was always on TV on ABC. They would always show it, and it was just so bizarre that you got the co-pilot played by what's his name George Kennedy. Shooting a flare gun from outside the cockpit. It just, the plane making so many turns that, it's impossible to make. And one of the forgotten airport movies was Airport 77. Now, that was a weird movie with Jack Lemmon, Jimmy Stewart, and a whole bunch of other people. And it was Pamela Bellwood was in that movie. And it was a weird movie because it was Jimmy Stewart was a really wealthy guy. He had his own 747, and it's hijacked and it's crashed into the ocean. And I am an aficionado of airplane crashes in terms of getting knowledge about airplane crashes and whatnot. And it defies the law of physics that the fuselage in that movie did not break up. When U.S. Airways Flight 1549 crashed, I was working at Meyer Swazi on 35th and Broadway, and I remember getting the CNN news reports that there was an airplane crash and it landed in the Hudson, and all I'm thinking about is the fuselage breaking up and whatnot. And then when I saw a picture of the plane floating, still up, I knew that the people survived. Airport 77, the plane crashes, it sinks to the bottom of the ocean, and it's the job of the U.S. Navy to pump that ship, pump the airplane up, and it's absurd. And the plane flies into the Bermuda Triangle and all that stuff, and that's really a lot like sometimes what 401k plan sponsors treat risk participants. These people have vanished. And the Bermuda Triangle of the retirement plan world isn't some mythical patch of ocean. It's a combination of bad record keeping, poor communication, the dangerous assumption that out of sight means out of mind. And, participants don't, fall off the face of the earth. This isn't like Amelia Earhart. They get lost through neglect. So, how do participants go missing? Most of the time, there's nothing really sinister about it. The average American worker now holds 12 jobs in a lifetime. Thankfully, working on my own for the last, 15 and a half years, I will be short of 12 jobs. But I think there was a point in my career, as I talk about in full circle, where I was changing jobs like every year or two. There was that instance where it was like 3 years at three different places. And that was when I decided, heck, you know what? Time to get off this carousel. But yeah, um, every one of those jobs is a transition, and it's a change, chance for an address, email, or phone number change. And if you're the record keeper or the HR team is on top of the updates, the participant might as well be floating somewhere off Nassau. Then there's the rollover the rollover problem. Participants leave, they don't take their action. They got the money in the account, it's above the cash out limit. And back in the old days, we really did nothing with these missing participants. If the plan was terminated, we can't find them. We would just, send the letter to the IRS letter program, or more sinisterly, we would just send 100% withholding to the government. And that doesn't go anymore. The DOL, now requires plan sponsors to do a whole lot of more than just shrugging and like, I wonder what happened to what's his name. The DOL, cares. Under ERISA, plan fiduciaries have a duty of loyalty and prudence, including making sure participants get the benefits they're earned. So, you get DOL audited, and, they're going to ask you, how do you keep track of your former employees? What's your process for updating contact information? Have you followed up with record keepers, payroll providers, and beneficiaries? Have you used all reasonable search methods to locate participants? You got to do something. The DOL doesn't expect perfection, but they expect some sort of effort, documentation, and consistency. They got a missing participant program, and the related guidance, it stresses that fiduciaries have to take reasonable steps to find participants. That means cross-checking internal records, sending certified mail, using commercial locator services, and contacting designated beneficiaries. You can't say, I sent this letter out, 13 years ago. It doesn't work like that. So how does a triangle form? Number one, the record keepers. The record keepers are supposed to be the navigator as your plan's data, but they can only steer with the information they're given. If your HR team doesn't provide timely updates, address changes, rehires, name changes, your participant data becomes unreliable. And when the deal audits, they just don't blame the record keeper. They're going to blame you. And plan sponsors are obviously on the hook for the accuracy of participant data. So, you got to make sure that there are no ghosts within your data. Then, of course, there's the payroll whirlpool. And one of the biggest issues of plan discrepancy is the disconnect between payroll and plan administrations. Contributions are missed, rehires get skipped, and terminations aren't properly communicated. A single mistransmission can cause participants to disappear from the active file. That's why reconciling payroll to plan deposits isn't nice to do, it's a must to do. Plan sponsors just don't reconcile payroll and, plan deposits. And next is the communication fog. You can't find people, you never talk to them. Many employers just rely on a single annual mailing or an outdated email list. And when the stuff gets bounced back, they're meaning to fix it and follow up, but a lot of times they forget. It's really busy being a plan sponsor. Sponsors need multi-channel communication. That means personal email, text alerts, mobile apps, even LinkedIn. If you think about it, participants update, Amazon faster than they update their, 401k accounts. Their Amazon address, they're going to be on top of that. Other stuff, not so much. If your communication strategy looks like it was designed when Friends was still on NBC, it's time for a reboot. And there's the cost of doing nothing. Department of Labor loves an easy target, or as Fletch said, the scapegoat of the week. When they audit and find dozens of missing participants, they assume other fiduciary problems exist. Lost accounts are a system of poor governance. The consequences could include restoration of benefits, fiduciary breach findings, reputational damage, increased audit risk. 44C, people, there is no delineation between a former employee participant and a participant. You have to give them the information, on fund changes and whatnot. You can't let these people, end up in witness protection. And there is no witness protection these days. It's easy to find people with so much of the internet, search engines and search programs and services that you could easily sign up. And then our friends at PenChecks, who can do a whole lot of finding these people. They have account balances less than $7,000. In Airport 77, the pilots didn't plan to end up underwater. Of course, they were knocked out by sleeping gas and a co-pilot that was part of the hijack crew. Good flight preparation might have helped them avoid disaster. In 401k terms, sponsors need a similar plan to prevent their data from sinking. So to avoid their own Bermuda Triangle, plan sponsors have to update their census data quarterly. Don't wait for the end of the year. Reconcile HR, payroll, and record-keeping data every quarter. Confirm employment status, addresses, and contribution levels. The fewer surprises, the better. Then we got the modern search tools, USPS address forwarding, social media, internet contacts, paid locator services, or credit bureau searches if needed. You got to document everything, every attempt you made at finding people. The Department of Labor likes effort and process. Back in the old days, you graduated school, you lost touch with people. You didn't know where they ended up, and you wanted to know how to get in touch with them. Now the internet make it so easy. People on Facebook, people you didn't want to remember and you didn't want to see, somehow they find you. That's a problem. It's also important. You got to audit the record keeper. Ask your record keeper how they track undeliverable mail and stale accounts. If they can't answer quickly, that's a sign to push for more transparency or find a new partner. It's important to educate participants while they're still there. Tell them, what do you want to do with your account, part of the exit checklist when you can them or when they're quitting. Get personal emails, phone numbers, and consent for electronic delivery before they walk out the door and you never see or hear from them again. Clean up forfeitures and small balances. Uncashed checks and tiny account balances are likely breadcrumbs that can help the Department of Labor to bigger issues. Adopt clear policies, roll over accounts under $5K to an IRA, cash out under $1,000, and document every step. Then we have issues with forfeitures. One of the strangest parts of the 401k Bermuda Triangle is the forfeiture mirage. Sponsors sometimes think that if an employee leaves and never claims their account, the money magically becomes company property. Now, you have that provision in the plan about the missing participants, and I never activate that because the last thing I want to do is worry that somebody's going to come forward and say, voila, where's my money? And, thanks to the silly Social Security program, you already have former employees who cashed out their balances and 15 years later are saying, well, the Social Security said I got some money in my account. Those are our lovely phone calls. I already got that today from one of my clients. Sponsors, really can't use those missing participants as some sort of forfeiture chest. Forfeitures can only occur under plan terms and only after the participants is truly forfeited, usually a break in service and full vesting review. Yeah, you still have that provision in the plan. I would never activate it and treat it as a forfeiture. And forfeitures, even if you did forfeit it, you can only use it for plan purposes, pay plan expenses, or reduce employer contributions. Treating missing participant funds like found money is a quick way to invite an audit and potentially a lawsuit. And, if you find out later that the missing participant's not missing, you're going to owe them the entire balance plus earnings. That's one rescue mission you don't really want. A culture of care. Avoiding the 401k plan Bermuda Triangle isn't just about compliance, it's about respect. Participants trust their employers to safeguard their retirement savings. Losing track of them undermines that trust. Your word is your bond. It's all about trust. The Department of Labor isn't going to make your life miserable. They're going to enforce a principle, and that people who earn benefits should be able to collect them. It's not red tape. It's a reminder that every dollar in your plan represents a person's future. And the final approach, and in conclusion, if Airport 77 taught us anything, it's that even when you crash into the ocean, you'd better have a plan to get back to the surface. The same goes for plan sponsors. Fiduciary responsibilities don't end when employees leave, they just change, altitude. Every participant is a story waiting to be found. The good news is that you don't need Jacques Cousteau or deep sea submersibles to find them. Just diligence, documentation, and a process that shows you actually give a rat's ass. In the 401k world, the Bermuda Triangle isn't mysterious, it's man-made. And unlike a Hollywood disaster movie, you have the chance to control, how the story ends. And the story doesn't have to end with that missing participant wanting $50,000 that you forfeited at forfeitures to get reinstated plus earnings. That's a story you don't want. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of that 401k podcast. And again, go to Amazon.com, Full Circle available. The other books are available as well. And that 401k Plan Provider Handbook out January 6th with a paperback version available. People want to interview me, tap my book, invite me on your podcast, whatever. I'm willing to promote this book. It's a good book, solid book, not a life story. And of course, go to that 401ksite.com. Further information on the National Virtual Conference at the end of January, I believe it's January 29th and 30th. We will be in Wrigley Field on Thursday, April 17th. We will be at Coors Field, Denver, Colorado, Tuesday, May 5th, 2026. We'll have a date eventually for Washington, D.C. And please tune in for another fun-filled episode of that 4K podcast. Take care. Bye.